Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Get Real Abundance Call. My name is Bruce Mathison, and I belong to this company. I am the developer of the distributor base out there and helping people across this great company of ours on a day-to-day basis. And my background, folks, I'll give it to you really quick. This is a sports call, and I'm kind of a sports guy. And my background is I grew up from the state of Wisconsin. And I played football, baseball, basketball. I ran track. I played hockey. I did everything I possibly could in sports. It kept me busy, kept me out of trouble. And growing up in Wisconsin, there was lots of things to do. The weather was great, except in the wintertime. So in the wintertime, we went inside. Even the hockey players played inside because it was so cold they couldn't play outside. But sports has been part of my life. I was fortunate enough to get a full-ride scholarship to the University of Nebraska, and played there 4 years. And again, I was fortunate enough to graduate and then play in the National Football League. I got drafted by the San Diego Chargers. I played there for 3 years, then played 2 years in Buffalo, and then 3 years in Seattle. And that was quite the experience. I did not get through that experience unscathed. I've had broken bones. I've had concussions. I've been had a few back surgeries, 2 of them, had shoulder surgery, a bunch of contusions, lots of inflammation, and as I turned 60, I now can start to feel the pain of all those years of playing all those sports. But what's more important in this sports is hydration, and the call tonight really is dealing with hydration and the ability to perform. Can you perform without hydration? Absolutely not. We know that there's trouble. We run into trouble all the time, and here's the real thing about hydration. Sometimes we think that hydration is only for the summertime. The weather gets hot, the temperature goes up, people start to sweat, and of course, there's absolutely we need more water every single day, especially for these young athletes that go outside in this type of weather. They need to hydrate over and over and over again. And we know for a fact that there's lots of products on the market today that you can go look at, and lots of things that you can pour into water and mix up and hydrate with, and you read all the things that are on there. But there's one thing above all else that is key and essential is water. I'll give you a quick story. I can tell you how important water and hydration is. When I was at the University of Nebraska, and we played on that artificial surface, and you could look down the sideline, and you could see the heat rising above the artificial surface. And we'd go out there in full gear, helmet, shoulder pads, jerseys, pants, socks, and we'd run in these plays. And the coaches were trying to stress, make sure it's going to be a hot day, guys. It's going to be humid today. Make absolutely sure that everybody gets enough water. One of our players, a defensive back, collapsed right on the field. And they rushed to his side, and he was complaining that his calves were cramping up. And I happened to be standing right by him because we ran a play that circled right by him, and I watched him fall down. And the anguish that he was in because his calves were starting to cramp. And here's the crazy thing. It worked its way up. It went from his calves into his thighs. And the pain and the panic and look in his face. And all of a sudden, behind his hamstring started to tighten up and lock up. It went right through his low back, and all of a sudden he arched, and his arms and his biceps and his triceps locked up. They could not get him off the field fast enough. They rushed him into the locker room. In the locker room, we have a little bit of an emergency room at the university, and they put him in, and they got ice buckets and bags, and they started throwing it on him. They put an little shot in his arm to give him some liquid, intravenous. And he was panicking. You could see it. His whole body had locked up, and it was a sight to see. And I'll never ever forget it. And I heard the trainers talking about. I told you they were in a little bit of an argument, telling about we're not getting these guys hydrated enough. The heat out there, what we're doing, they're exhausting themselves. And then another player dropped with a little cramp in his leg, and a couple other guys, just kind of minor stuff. But this particular player scared him. So much so that when he went in the locker room, they were a little nervous with him. We've seen players here in Arizona when it gets so hot. These poor players right now in the heat of the day, starting in July and August, they're going to go out and start practicing Here, when the temperatures reach 112 and 115 and 114 like it is today, even though it's 8% humidity, it doesn't mean that they can escape this hydration. In fact, they need it more than anybody. And so a lot of these schools will play and practice in the wee hours of the morning. You got to go to practice for football practice here in Arizona at 5 a.m. in the morning, because at 5 a.m. in the morning, it's the coolest time of the day at 92 degrees. And it's so important for these young athletes to hydrate. But also not just summer, not just when it's hot, but even in winter. The hockey players, you'd be surprised, even the guys that play inside, they put on all this gear, and even though you think they're on ice and they're not working, they're sweating. And it's amazing to me what happens to them. And so I have a guest on today that I'm very excited to talk to. I'm very excited to hear his story, and here's why. He's a chiropractor, but he understands the entire world of nutrition and water. And he understands what we're talking about because we have a product called Get Real Abundance, and it's a negative ionized concentrate. And he understands that world and why that is so important. It's Dr. John Murphy. You might recognize that name Murphy because his sister, Dr. Catherine Murphy, talked to us last week on the telephone, and she gave us such great insight. They're a family that's very special. And as I get to know this family, all of them, they've got, I think there's 9 or 10 brothers, all brothers and a sister, and they're all in the health and nutrition sciences. And it's fun to talk with them because they're so knowledgeable in what they do. What I like about John, when I talked to him today, he's up at Mathison, Wisconsin. He works with hockey players, and he works with basketball players, football players, soccer players. He works with a lot of athletes, and he understands the need for hydration. So without further ado, Dr. John Murphy, are you on the phone with me?
Yes, sir.
Such a pleasure to have you. How's your haircut?
It feels much better.
It's funny. I got one too today. We were laughing, folks. He says, I'll get on the call, but he said, I got a haircut appointment, so I have to hustle. so here he is. So, hey, Doc, thanks so much for taking your time and getting on with us tonight. Now, you have a great background. Give us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, I'm a chiropractor, one of 5 in my family. So I grew up with it, and I practiced conventional chiropractic for 20-some years, and then started to kind of shift into what I call body work. It's not massage. It's I could just call it body work. But by definition, what it is it's kind of like rolfing and fascial work. And I just stumbled onto the stuff that I do working with this high school kid who had an ACL repair. He was recovered, good to go, and his leg and knee still hurt, and it wasn't working right. And I just started feeling the tissues and worked with it, and it was extremely painful to him. But after an hour, he was like a new person. And I thought, about 5 years ago, and I thought, okay, what did we just do? And I just started digging into the journals, and fascial manipulation, fascial work was the buzz in the journals at the time, and it still is. We're still in the infancy. But what I really started to do is work with different types of athletes. You know, after I learned that 30 to 40% of muscle strength comes from fascia, it was a eureka moment. I thought, okay, well, what does that mean? And I started working with some power lifters, just experimenting, and across the board, just by doing body work and chiropractic combination, they were having personal bests. They were winning competitions and all that. But, you know, that kind of grew into other athletes and other types of things. And then working with younger bodies versus older bodies, I just started to notice the young ones that were, you know, they're softer, they're more hydrated, and the muscle tissue isn't so dense and stiff The spine isn't as stiff. I could work on somebody like, say, a hockey player who's all bent and twisted for an hour and spring their posture back to near normal. I mean, it was really amazing. And so that just, kind of led me down the path of, other types of things. Instead of chasing injuries all the time, which is still happening in the NHL, they don't have good support for their athletes. I should rephrase that. At UW, the strength coach there is very, very good. He takes care of the boys. They get hydrated, they get fed well. He just does a good job with them. But what I started to notice when working on people is if people aren't sure what the fascia is, it's that covering of the muscles. It pretty much holds the body's shape together. It compartmentalizes muscles, and it's what gives the body shape, not the muscles themselves. It's the fascia. And the fascia is basically like it's like a series of membranes, but it does more than hold the body. It transmits information too. It allows information, neuroendocrine information to pass throughout the body at lightning speed. That's what it does. But it's not going to work properly if the body is depleted. And I'm talking, water, of course, but minerals. And when people sweat a lot, like they are, now in Wisconsin, if they don't replenish that, it just leads to a lot of issues. Everybody understands that you have to hydrate in the heat, but what you hydrate with is important. Some of the sports drinks, what gives them their so-called benefit is sodium chloride, sucrose, and a couple other things that just, it's not really that good of a product. But if people have structured water, I'm not sure how to explain that, like negative hydrogen ions in water, that comes from nature, like glaciers and mountain streams where there's a lot of physical force on the water as it goes over the rocks. It cleaves the molecules, and that's the kind of stuff that the body needs to function, the natural water. And that is what absorbs energy, like light energy. When we're out in the sun, just like a plant with photosynthesis, the light is absorbed by the structured water in the body to perform, the intracellular functions. It's got to get in the cell to perform those functions. And a lot of times, if you notice when people are dehydrated, they're drinking and drinking and drinking, and they're still thirsty. And that's just because the ions are not crossing the cell membranes. So, and we've all known for years that the best thing to consume is ionized and basic water, like a higher pH. And that is what the body can use. And it's the closest thing to nature that we can put in our bodies so it will function properly. And the stuff that we get out of the tap is dead. It's dead water. It's not living. So we can't really expect that to help us. It takes the edge off, but if you notice how people, as they get older, some people can be 80 and still pretty vibrant with good posture and, energetic, while others are, for lack of better terms, they look wilted. They just have no hydration left, and that affects everything. And if you pick a flower that's been vibrant, from outside, it doesn't take long, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes, and that thing is starting to die. It's starting to wilt because you cut off its energy source, its water source, and that's what's happening to people right before their eyes. So I don't know.
Doc, with some of the people that are listening, we called a bunch of athletes. There's athletes on here. There might be some coaches on here, maybe some trainers on here. What happens to an athlete when he starts to dehydrate? What are some of these symptoms that you see when there's not enough of good water running through those muscles?
Achy, fatigue, just sluggish. They just headaches. They don't feel well. And now these young boys that are the pro guys that I see in the summer, they are back training at the UW. And this summer there's been a lot of weddings, for their buddies, and there's been bachelor parties. So let's just say that Mondays and Tuesdays they're pretty beat up, and it's not always because they had too much alcohol. It's because they got dehydrated. And then they're back training, and their bodies just have to recuperate. So, but they're still immortal. They can do it. But that's the main thing. It's aches and pains and headaches and stuff like that.
Can it go too far? I mean, like right now,
yeah.
we're in Arizona, and there's a lot of kids, and I've noticed throughout the years that all the people, everybody talks about hydration, but does anybody really prepare? Because it seems like they try to hydrate right at the time they're going to go to perform, and that's really not the way to do it, right? I mean, you really want to be prepared as you get into your performance. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, we had football practice, and we had guys collapsing, and that was, back then the coaches thought, well, get tough, and then give salt tablets at the end of the practice. Well, taking it too far is not good. I mean, I don't know what the long-term effects are, but it's not smart. But
your sister introduced you to a company and a product that absolutely, without question, creates that type of environment in the water that you were talking about, negative ionized water.
Right.
How important would it be for these athletes, young or old, retired, or even the amateurs, maybe not necessarily the pro athletes, but all these amateur athletes that are out there, the hikers, the walkers, the joggers, the swimmers, people that go climb mountains and do all these kinds of stuff. How important is it for them to get to drink this type of negative ionized water?
Well, it's not just important, it's pretty critical. Like I said, other water is dead. It's not living. When you ionize and structure the water, it becomes like a natural medication to the body, for the cell functions. And, we just don't have enough of that.
If I was somebody who had this product, and I had a patient, or if I had a neighbor, a friend, or like mine in my neck of the woods, everybody plays sports. How could I tell these athletes, young, old, retired, weekend warriors, all those type of dudes, how do I tell them, they think they're drinking smart water. They think they're drinking Fiji water. They think they're drinking all these waters that they can purchase at the store. How do I tell them, how do I explain the difference between the water that they're drinking and the water that we can produce through this concentrate?
Well, that's a good question. Sometimes seeing some sort of a short video, like you had mentioned today, when somebody demonstrated something with some drops to you, and it changed the pH, or it changed, just some sort of a demonstration. Or you can take somebody's blood, live blood cell analysis. Do you know what rulocine is? With live blood cell, where the red blood cells clump together and there's a lot of reasons for that. It could be illness, but simple hydration and acidic blood. The blood, just like the temperature, has to be constant. It's got to be around 7.3 or 7.4 pH, and the body will do whatever it takes to normalize that. And some of the side effects of acidic blood is the cells clumping together. And if you expose that to ionized and negative hydrogen ions, or higher pH, it breaks them up. It turns the blood, so to speak, the cells back to normal. And
I've actually seen that happen right in front of me live before. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They call it sticky blood, and then all of a sudden it's unsticky, and you see the red blood cells flow to do what they're supposed to be doing and operating the way they're supposed to be operating. That's a fascinating thing to see. You talked about something about shrinking earlier today when you and I had a conversation. You talked about this little shrinkage of these water molecules so they could get into the cell. How does that work?
Sure. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I hated chemistry, and I still do. But somehow it cleaves. It allows the molecule to break, somehow into smaller, smaller, so it can get through the cell membrane. And that's where it all happens. And you've got to do that to make the mitochondria work, and you've got to have like non-sticky blood, like you just called it, to get oxygen into the tissues. You've got to have everything working properly. And the best way to do it, nature's way, is the right water. I haven't used the product yet because I just heard about it, but I'm on the phone because I know how important that stuff is. And besides, my sister's one of those people that reads everything, and if I have a question, I just call her and ask. But anyway,
she was on the phone with us. She's fun to talk to.
Yeah.
So, here's the thing, Doc, we're getting kind of towards the bottom of the hour, and I really appreciate you. And folks, he's right. I kind of put him on the spot tonight. He's new to this, but he understands. He's new to our company. He's new to the product, but he understands exactly what these athletes need. And they need to be taught. They need to understand what the correct water is and drinking and taking with. Now, you say you work with hockey players. Do you work them at the college level and the pro level?
Yes, and high school and even kids. It just depends. But what I do notice is with athletes, okay, there's a certain sensitivity level when I do the stuff I do. It's pretty aggressive, so it's painful. The cleaner somebody is, the clean diet, but also hydration, the cleaner they are, the less pain there is. And I can get through the tissues easier. It springs back, and the reason I do it is, well, there's a lot of reasons, but mainly to reactivate stuff that's been tight and to stabilize joints, so they function. So instead of chasing injuries, like I mentioned, we are enhancing performance. And it's only going to work in a body that's not full of pain chemicals from a poor diet, but that poor diet and the pain chemicals is also because they aren't flushing out. They don't have the right type of structured water in their body to flush out through the lymphatic system. So they're, like instead of really pristine, like a pristine lake or river, it's more like pond water. So we want to cleanse everybody, and that's the best way to do it. It's like I said, it's like if you want the best type of water for humans to consume, it's going to be running, like mountain water, glacier water, and it's going to be loaded with negative hydrogen because that water's been pounded over rocks. It's living. So that's about all I know.
Listen, Doc, I really appreciate you taking your time to get on the phone with us and talk with us tonight. It's very educating because we know in our world today, athletes and their performance is extra special. Parents want to take care of their children. They want to get them the best of the best. We can't always run to get glacier water. In fact, in here in Arizona, I don't think there's any. But I do know the very, very next best thing. In fact, might even be even a little bit better, is get your hand on the Get Real Abundance concentrate that you can squirt in your water, take with you, and take that from a positive charge to a negative charge to increase the ability to hydrate the body and to increase your ability to get out there and perform at the skill level you work so hard for. I can't tell you, Doc, so many times I've seen these athletes get out there, and because they didn't take care of themselves, because they didn't hydrate, because they didn't do something, because they weren't on top, they couldn't play at the top of their game. You've seen it. You witnessed it. You've seen them on the ice. You've seen them on the court. You've seen them on the field. That all of a sudden, when they start to lose hydration, the concentration level isn't there. I've been in the fourth quarter, and I don't care if I'm playing indoors or outdoors. It didn't matter. When I was in that huddle and looked at those guys, and they had their hands on their knees and their eyes, their heads were down, they were losing steam. They had nothing left. And they were losing the ability to concentrate, and that's when guys got hurt. That's where guys made mistakes. And so hydration in any sport, doesn't matter what it is the thing that needs to be done.
I was just going to say, what usually follows that type of a scenario is injury, local injury to spots that aren't energized. It could be a knee or a hip or a back or whatever, but they just start to fail. It's not that they aren't strong. The tissues are failing because they don't have the ingredients they need.
Yep. And I've also seen, I've listened to all the stories and read all the articles of all these different types of drinks that are available to the athletes out there today. And still, everybody agrees the number one component for proper hydration has been water. It always will be. There's other things you need. I'm not questioning those. I'm not downplaying those. But still, the number one thing that we need is water. And here's the thing about water. Everybody drinks it. Everybody needs it. And you will die without it. And the athlete, his performance will die without it. And so we've got a product right now that these young athletes, these old athletes, these middle athletes, all athletes, young, old, male, female, I don't care if you're professional or amateur, you have the ability right now to get your hands on a product that absolutely will help you in your performance and keep you maybe from not performing at the level you work so hard for. You really don't want to lose your hydration in the fourth quarter. You really don't want to lose your hydration in that third period. You really don't want to lose your hydration at the end of that period. You really want to perform at your best at the end. When others are losing steam, when others are losing hydration, we need to make sure we're properly prepared so we prevent poor performance. And doing that is getting yourself hydrated way before your event, during your event, and completely after your event. And that will make you a well-rounded athlete. Doc, thanks so much for taking your time tonight. I really appreciate you and your family and all the things that you do, and we look forward to really working with you. And when you get your water, when you get your concentrate, I can't wait to hear your stories because I know you're going to share them with those hockey players, with those soccer players, with those professional people up in Wisconsin, and we look forward to hearing from you and working with you. Thanks again so much for being on the phone call tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, all right. That wraps it up. That was Dr. John Murphy, brother of Dr. Kathy Murphy, and it's a great family, well-educated, really knowledgeable. We look forward to working with that entire group. Thanks for being on our call tonight. Really appreciate everybody that came out and listened. And again, next week, we're looking forward to another call. And then on the 25th of July, we have Dr. Glenn on the third part of the miraculous properties of ionized water by Bob McCauley. Thanks, everybody, for being on the call tonight.